My name is Ryan. What I'm about to share happened to me on a stretch of Highway 1A running through my rural hometown. And it's something I'll never forget. That road had a dark reputation. It was narrow, poorly lit, and full of sharp bends. Along the shoulders, every few dozen yards, small screens with burning incense had been placed in memories of those who had passed away there. The elders in our neighborhood would quietly warn us that the energies on that road after dark was deeply unsettling. That lost souls wander it every night, searching for company. I was born with what some call a third eye. Whenever I fall into a deep sleep, and my frequency accidentally drifts toward the other side, that eye opens on its own. My body stays still in bed, but my spirit slips away in another realm. And that highway, with its roadside shrine just outside my home, was the place I feared the most. One night, it happened again. I found myself walking down the center of the highway. Everything was completely silent. No engines, no headlights, nothing. A thick, heavy fog had swallowed the world around me, turning everything a pale, ghostly white. Then I noticed something scatter at my feet. Money, scattered all across the road. Without thinking, I started picking it up. The further I walked, the more I found. I was so focused on gathering it that I didn't notice how much time has passed, until my arms were full and I finally looked up. I wasn't alone. Shapes moved through the fog all around me. Figures dressed in thin white clothing, the kind worn at funerals, was also bent down, picking up the same money. I squinted, trying to see them more clearly. Then the cold hit me, starting from my feet, rising all the way to the top of my head. They weren't people. Some were incomplete in ways that make no sense. Others seemed to fade away at the waist. Some had nothing above their shoulders at all. They weren't walking. They were dragging themselves slowly across the road, moving in ways no living person ever could. I looked down at the money piles in my arms. My stomach sank. It wasn't real currency. It was paper offering money, the kind left out as gifts for the departed. I had wandered into the realm of the dead. Panic took over completely. I tried everything I could think of to wake myself up. I bit my lip. I pressed hard on my own head. Nothing worked. I could feel how thin the boundary between the living world and this place truly was. If any of those figures realized a living soul was standing among them, I knew I would be in serious danger. Then, I remembered something my mother has told me long ago. I dropped the spirit money and ran. I sprinted as fast as I could, chanting Buddhist prayer under my breath, not stopping until I passed through the gates of a sacred temple nearby. The moment I crossed that threshold, I shot awake in my bed. My sheet was soaked through the cold sweat. My heart was hammering in my chest. I thought the worst was over, and I was wrong. A few days later, I fell into another dream. This one felt so ordinary, so grounded and normal, that I had no idea I was asleep. I was riding a bicycle along the same stretch of highway. The soft clicking of the chain was the only sound. As I passed an empty lot, something slipped out of my front basket. A grayish bag that tumbled off the road and rolled to a stop at the edge of a drainage ditch. I pull up, climb up the bike, and make my way down toward the ditch. An unpleasant, musty smell rose from below. I reached out and grabbed the bag to pull it up. But what I felt wasn't fabric. It was cold, damp, and there was strange of something tangled in my fingers. A sharp, metallic smell reached my nose. Under the dim yellow glows of the street lamps above, I slowly looked at what I was holding. It wasn't a bag. It was a face. A young man's face. Pale, cold, completely still. Something dark dripped steadily from it onto my shoes. And as I stood there, unable to move, unable to look away, the eyes opened. They found mine. And slowly, the corners of the mouth pulled back into a wide, unnatural smile. I screamed and threw it into the darkness. I woke up instantly, gasping for air. For the rest of that night, I couldn't sleep. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. The very next day, at exactly the edge of that same ditch, a terrible accident took place. A young driver lost control of his motorcycle and collided with a parked truck at high speed. The impact was devastating. When the emergency workers searched the area the following morning, they found what remained of him resting near the ditch, in the exact spot I had seen in my dream. To this day, one question stayed with me. Why did the wandering spirits on that highway choose me to witness the final moment of a stranger I had never even met? Still me, Ryan. This next story didn't happen directly to me, but it unfolded right in my neighborhood, not far from that same stretch of highway. At the end of a dirt road leading into our community stood an enormous ancient tree in an empty lot. It happened there long before any of us were born, long before the neighborhood itself existed. Its canopy was so dense, it swallowed the moonlight whole, and its thick roots pushed up through the soul, like giant fingers gripping the earth. From the time I was small, the adults make one thing absolutely clear. No one's go near that tree after dark. The elders said, a deeply troubled spirit has made the tree its home. On the highest, darkest branches, people have seen a woman in a white dress, sitting with her legs dangling in the air. Her long hair loose and tangled. She held something small and bundled tightly in her arms. Some nights, people heard quiet, mournful weeping drifting down from the leaves. Other nights, a sharp, unsettling laugh would cut through the silence. What disturbed the factory workers coming home late, most of all, was the sounds. A slow, high-pitched lullaby floating down from somewhere deep in the dark canopy above them. Many people chose to take the long way home just to avoid that lot. But every town has at least one person who refuse to believe in anything they can see with their own eyes. In our neighborhood, that person was Arthur. Arthur was a middle-aged man with a stubborn streak and a well-known love of strong drink. One sweltering afternoon, Arthur was out of his front porch, drinking with a group of friends. As the afternoon wore on and the alcohol took hold, the conversation turned to a local legends, and the laughter started. One of his friends pointed toward the empty lot and threw out a dare. Chop down that tree, and he'd cover Arthur's drinks for an entire month. Arthur didn't even hesitate. He slammed his hand on the table, pushed himself to his feet, and pointed straight at the lot. What spirit? I'll chop it into a firewood. Come and watch. He went around to his backyard, picked up a heavy, logging axe, and marched out into the blazing afternoon sun, shirtless, completely confident and not looking back once. Standing before the trunk, so wide that 3 grown adults couldn't wrap their arms around it, Arthur spat into his palms, rubbed them together, and swung. The blade sank deep into the bark. Then, the smile on his face slowly disappeared. From the gash where the axe had struck, something began to seep out. It wasn't the pale, cloudy sap you'd expect from a tree. What oozed from the wound was dark and deep red, pushing out in heavy drop at first, then running steadily down the trunk into dark streams. A sharp, rusty smell filled the air around him, thick enough to make breathing uncomfortable. The tree was not like any tree he had ever touched. Arthur's hands began to shake. He released the axe handle. Whatever courage the alcohol had given him was gone in an instant, replaced by something cold and very real. He stumbled backward and landed hard on the grass. His face had gone completely pale, too proud to call out to his friends. He got back on his feet, left the axe where it was, and walked briefly away without once looking behind him. He passed his puzzled friends with a tight jaw and a thin excuse. splitting headache. I'll finish it tomorrow. And went straight home, shut himself in his bedroom, and pulled the covers over his head. Everyone assumed that was the end of it. It wasn't. Early the next morning, the entire neighborhood was woken up by the screams of Arthur's wife coming from their backyard. Neighbors gathered quickly. What we found was deeply unsettling. The entire flock, more than 20 chickens and ducks, lay completely still across the yard. There was no signs of a struggle, no scattered feathers, no marks, no indication of any animal has gotten in. Every single of them was gone, lying stiff on the dirt, with their eyes wide open, as though something invisible had simply passed through overnight and taken the life out of them. But what truly made my skin crawl was the German Shepherd. This was not a small dog. It was large, powerful, and aggressive, always chained in the front yard, always ready to bark and lunge at anyone unfamiliar. That morning, we found it wedged into the darkest, tightest corner, beneath the front steps. It had made itself as small as it possibly could, tail tucked in, trembling from nose to tail. Its eyes was wide and fixed, staring at the single empty spot on the ceiling above. It wasn't barking. It wasn't growling. It was making small, frightened sounds. And it would not look away from that spot. Whatever it was seeing, it hadn't left the house. Arthur's family was never quite the same after that. They put together a careful and respectful offering, carried it out to the empty lot, and bowed their heads in sincere apology. And from that day on, not a single person in the neighborhood, no matter how bold, no matter how much they had to drink, ever spoke about that street with anything less than complete respect. Some things are better left alone. The third story is the most deeply unsettling event ever connected to my hometown. It is ultimate proof of one rule. You'll never make a deal with something you cannot see. Because our area has such a dark reputation for accidents, superstitions ran deep. Among the locals was a group of middle-aged men and women who has fallen into serious gambling debt. Having lost nearly everything, they grew desperate enough to try something most people would never dare. They decided to reach out to the other side to ask for winning lottery numbers. They chose a desolate mountain pass near the provincial border. It was freezing, pitch black, and well known among locals as a place where lost, wandering spirits gathered. At exactly midnight, the group climbed the mountain, carried incense, candles, and a hammock spirit board. The wind cut through the pass without stopping. To test whether an entity has actually responded to their call, they used an old, forbidden method. Placing a raw egg upright on a smooth ceramic tile. The belief was simple. If something unseen was present and holding it in place, the egg would stand on its own. There, in the middle of that howling wind, the egg slowly rose upright, its balance perfectly still on the smooth surface. Something that should have been impossible. Every person there felt a warmth leave their body. Something had arrived. Swallowing their fear, they lit a candle, placed their finger on the wooden planchette, and began their chant. The temperature dropped sharply. The candle flame leaned low, as though someone nearby was breathing on it. But it held. Then the planchette began to move. It glided deliberately across the board, smooth and controlled. One by one, it spelled out a series of numbers. The group exchanged glances, eyes wide, hearts racing, but glittering with hope. To seal the agreement, one of the women leaned forward and whispered, "If these numbers win tomorrow, what offering do you want us to bring? Roast pork? A small stream?" The planchette went still. Then it moved again. Fast this time. Faster than before. It shot between letters with a sharp, urgent energy, spelling out a response that froze every person where they sat. O-N-E-H-E-A-D. One head. It didn't stop there. It kept moving, adding a final condition. F-R-O-M-A-N-H-E-R-E. From a man here. Silence fell completely over the mountain pass. Only something deeply malicious would ask such a thing. No one spoke. Then one of the men scrambled to his feet, knocked the board into the dirt, and broke the egg. They grabbed what they could and ran down the dark mountain without once looking back at the empty space behind them. The following afternoon, the numbers the board had given came in. Every single one of them. But no one person in that group had dared to play. They told themselves that if they hadn't taken the winnings, they owned nothing. The deal was off. They were wrong. The agreement had been made the moment the egg stood upright and they placed their hands on the board. Whether or not they collected the prize made no difference. Something was already waiting to collect its size of the wagon. 5 days later, the oldest man in the group was riding his motorcycle along the highway at dusk. A large cargo truck traveling in the same direction struck him from behind with tremendous force. What followed is almost impossible to explain. Despite the road being tranked and well lit, the truck driver later told investigators that his vision had gone completely dark at the moment of impact. His co-driver said the same, that they had seen nothing. The truck did not slow down. It continued moving, carrying the man beneath it for nearly 40 miles from one province into the next. It was only when other drivers on the highway noticed what was happening, chased the truck and blocked its path, that the driver finally stopped. Confused and completely unaware of what had occurred. When investigators examined the scene, what they had found beneath the vehicle was deeply disturbing. The rest of his body had not survived the distance, but one specific part, the very thing the entity on the board has asked for, was found completely intact, lodged safely in a cavity just behind the front wheel, separated cleanly at the moment of the very first impact. It was the only thing left to identify him by, and it was exactly what had been requested. If any part you think that is simply a fabricated urban legend, open your search bar, type in Vietnam 60-kilometer container truck accident. You will find real news reports, documented articles, a recorded incident that investigators called a tragic and unexplained accident. The press reported that they could see and measure. They had no way of knowing what had taken place on a dark mountain pass 5 days before. They didn't know about the board. They didn't know about the demand spelled out in the cold and the wind. But the people who were on that mountain that night, they know. They know exactly why it happened. And they know that some debts are always eventually collected.